Hello everybody, quick video today to wish you a happy day because yes, it has become routine now, Michael Saylor. But, and the question is, how much did he buy? I don't know, I have a hard time saying. I don't think he did the ATM this week either, but how much Strike and STRF ATM was in place, well, that's a really wild card right now. I don't really know. I can tell you Bitcoin's recovered nicely now that the Middle East tensions have, toned down. Bitcoin strategy at 383. Noteworthy that MicroStrategy of a stock, right? Strategy of a stock was trading at 397. We were doing good. We could have probably broken the $400 mark if it were not for your traditional afternoon POTUS fear, this time about trade talks, ending for the nth time. I don't know how many times trade talks have ended with Canada, but this is not the first time. My view on this is that this is just macro tensions and the trade talks will resume very quickly. That is just my view. But that was enough for the algos to take our favorite stock down, and that's just the way it is. It doesn't change anything about the long-term picture, of this stock. And again, did the ATM? Well, if it didn't, that really validates this view, which Saylor has moved to a new paradigm. One paradigm of draining the bond market, siphoning the bond market, being the black hole in the bond market. He's changing the paradigm of how Bitcoin treasury companies operate. He's far ahead of a lot of the other companies on that one. And if he hasn't done MSTR ATM in 5 weeks, which may be the case tomorrow if we find out, then that really means to me that, hey, we're not going to see any convertible debt again. I don't think that's going to be a thing. And maybe we won't see any ATM again. I hope he continues to do the ATM because it's accretive at 1.6. As far as I'm concerned, as a very long-term investor, it's accretive at 1.6. I'm fine. Like anything, as long as you don't do ATM like Saylor did the ATM, I'm fine if it's accretive. But it seems like he's found a better game in town. I think he's saving an ATM for the better times. I think he's saving the ATM because, you got approved the 21 billion on it. So I think he's saving it for times of euphoria. And we may get that with the S&P500 rumors and news, and just the chatter of being qualified for it could make the stock pump go up. I don't know. Nobody really knows how these markets work. What's for sure is that liquidity, M2, is increasing, money supply is increasing, and as a result of that, a company that owns the most of the scarcest asset in the universe, Bitcoin, well, that company should outperform. And so he acts like a siphon. He's focused on the bigger pool of capital, which is the bond market. Much bigger market than the equity market. Another thing we're eagerly waiting for. So we got the Strike and the STRF ATM. Frankly, I'm disappointed. He only did $2.1 billion on the STRF ATM. I hope he expands that at some point to 21 billion as well. I always thought that was weird. We're eagerly waiting for another one, which is the STRD ATM. The STRD ATM, the announcement should be out soon. I'm surprised he hasn't done that yet. He must be working on it, but we need to see a STRD ATM, and then we would have a stock that has a quadruple ATM: Strike, STRF, STRD, and then MSTR. And if Strike, STRF, STRD were all at 21 billion, we know STRF is only 2.1 billion. If they were all at 21 billion, well, that would really help with your siphoning of the bond market. That would help quite a bit. That's the long-term story of MicroStrategy. That's why I asked in a prior video, are you so sure that MicroStrategy will underperform? Are you so sure about that? Because that's the narrative right now, that Metaplanet will outperform and everybody will outperform. I ask, are you so sure? Because they're going after the bond market, which is a much bigger market. Saylor's moved on to something bigger, seemingly bigger in my view, and he has to, right? Because the bag is so big. The bag is 592,000 Bitcoin. That's a lot of Bitcoin. That's a lot of supply. I want to talk about a few things here. We had BTC Prague, of course. last week. A few interviews were dropped. 21 ways to wealth. That was a really good one. That's the Bitcoin Las Vegas. I meant to show you the over 21. He did another 21 speech. 21% vol, 21% AR. Look at the 21 speech from the Prague interview, from the Prague keynote. The other speech that I found perhaps even better than the 5x21 speech was the one about BTC theory and practice. You can see Saylor really taking the role of a professor, of an academic here, telling us how he thinks. BTC theory and practice, very great talk. There's 3 people on that panel. Adam Back didn't say a thing. Alexandre just asked the questions, and Saylor just took the floor, as he always does, and he's had a few new thoughts. So the first thought that he did, if you watch this interview, he said, if they had an MNAV of 6 to 10, you should ATM to oblivion. That's at least what I understood from the way he was talking about it. He was saying that if the ATM at MicroStrategy, if the MNAV at MicroStrategy was between 6 and 10 or 5 and 10, he would just absolutely hit the ATM all the time. They can't do that because, of course, the ATM at MicroStrategy is, the way I calculated, I use market cap is 1.74. The way a lot of people in the BTC treasury industry, there is such a thing, they use enterprise value, and of course, enterprise value, you're going to get a little something lower, like a 1.68. Doesn't really matter. They move hand in hand together. Let's call it 1.7 MNAV. Frankly, it's not the worst. I've seen it down to 1.45, 1.7 would be fine. You could ATM at that level, but I understand that there's a lot of misconceptions about the ATM. A lot of people don't like the ATM. Wall Street, perhaps among the top, the algos among the top don't like the ATM because they hear dilution on the common. That's why they don't like the ATM, even though the dilution on the ATM is accretive, right? If you dilute by 1% to grow the bag by 1.74%, you capture 0.74% of BTC yield, right? That's how it works. But again, that word of dilution has such stigma in traditional finance that it may take years and years and years to change the view. Saylor has done a lot to change that view in traditional finance, and of course he's found a playbook that has worked for him. He has earned permanent capital. I think I saw it was from Lynn Alden today, talking about even if MicroStrategy were trading at a 1x MNAV right now, it would still have outperformed Bitcoin handsomely since the start of that strategy, because of course it's all about the Bitcoin yield. Point number 2, and this one was particularly interesting. Saylor said in that BTC Prague interview, Metaplanet is going to beat MSTR at the Japan preferred. Apparently Saylor tried, or at least that's based on his speech. I can tell that he probably tried, and apparently he said that it's going to take them a very long time before they're able to do so. And so, apparently, and I know, I've said before, and I've known that they've been trying to do international instruments. To me, that's what they're working under the scenes right now. And the fact that he said to Gerovich, the CEO of Metaplanet, that Simon Gerovich, he told him it's going to be much easier for you to do it than me to do it, tells me that he looked into it. And You'll note that I've been noticing more and more Saylor hanging out with Alexandre, and this is very interesting to me because he tweeted this yesterday, about the famous French quote, right? And in front of the Eiffel Tower, and then you have Alexandre who's responding, French flag and then fire. So, trying to read between the lines, does that mean that he would have better luck issuing a bond in Europe or in France? I mean, the European Central Bank, the ECB, keeps dropping the interest rates. The interest rates are much lower there. I can think also of the Swiss bank, right? The Swiss bank is at 0. The rates are much lower. There's a history of US companies raising funds in Europe on the cheap. So is he signaling something? Is it going to be easier for him to raise funds maybe in Europe, maybe in France, than it is going to be easier for him to do that in Japan? Also, look at this quote, right? So liberty, equality, and brotherhood. So of course, this can be construed as Bitcoin, right? This relates to a class warfare. Fraternité is related to the class warfare of the ancien régime, but égalité, liberté, maybe he hasn't found that he was treated equally by the Japanese regulator. Maybe that's something he hasn't found, and maybe he thinks he's going to be treated much more equally by the European regulator. I have no idea, but maybe something is going on, so we could see something in the way of a European instrument. That would be my reading through the lines of this tweet and of him hanging out more with Alexandre, and of him also saying to Gerovich, you're going to beat me in Japan for the preferred, so go ahead and do the preferred first. Okay, so that's my point. Point number three. Point number three. This is genius. This point I love. He made this point in this video. Oh, this is stunning. And of course, most of us, this is related to U.S. Residents, right? U.S. citizens. Wouldn't apply if you're abroad. But the point is very interesting. We often forget, because most of us invest. We have our jobs and stuff, so we often forget about qualified dividends and what that means to be a qualified dividend. And I actually knew this back in the day. I had forgotten about it. Now I was reminded about it. It's true that if you don't have any other income, the tax rate on a qualified dividend is 0% up to $48,350 if you don't have any other income. The reason why dividend income is taxed at 15% for most people is because most people have a day job, right? And if you have a day job, then you're not making less than $48,000, so you're not getting taxed 0%. 0%. You're not getting taxed 0% on the first $48,000. But the implications for this on people wanting financial freedom, the implications on this, on the, if you go online, you'll find the FIRE movement, the FIRE community, the implication on this even in the dividend community, which is not at all the theme of this channel. I'm all about growth, growing the portfolio, but there's a lot of people who would be very happy just having $50,000 come in tax-free and just enjoy the good life, move to Portugal or move to, I don't know, Indonesia or something, and live the good life and pay very little tax. And there's a lot of people who would be very happy doing that. And so that really struck a light for me. You can see that's at minute 20 in the BTC Prague interview. Talking about you can buy their instrument. So essentially, if you assume you achieve FIRE, financial independence, retire early, if you assume you achieve that for $50,000 a year, essentially $500,000 is all you need to save. So the 4% rule is entirely out of the window because of financial engineering from Saylor, and also because of the tax code and the way the tax code is set up. And this really got me thinking, folks. And if you have a current job, of course, the FICA, the Social Security tax, is split. For most of us, it is split between yourself and your employer, and you end up paying 7.2 and 7.2 or something like that. But I can tell you, if you earn money elsewhere, right? If you're an Uber driver, for example, or if you have a YouTube channel, for example, you're getting taxed. Self-employment tax, i.e. FICA, your Social Security, that's 15.4% already. 15.4% already. Plus your regular tax bracket. So income is taxed, depending on your tax bracket, 2 to 3 times higher than the range between $48,000 and $96,000. $48,000 and $533,000 for dividend, which is taxed as 15%. 15%, and you still get the first tranche and up to $48,000 if you only have qualified interest. Qualified dividends, if you only have qualified dividend as an income, you still get the $48,000 at 0%. So that instrument, STRF, we are just beginning to scratch the surface of how relevant that instrument is to, say, the FIRE community. It's very relevant because the FIRE community, typically they're looking at wanting, 1.5, 1.2, 1.3 million, and they're looking at buying a lot of very, very boring, your standard Vanguard dividend ETF. Go compare the difference of a standard Vanguard dividend ETF. You need 3 times as much money as you need in STRF to retire on the Vanguard dividend ETF or the Schwab dividend ETF. So to these people, this should be extremely appealing. And as Saylor said, as the market starts noticing that, for example, STRF or Strike, depending on the issues, between 5x or 10x over collateralized, well, that becomes even more appealing. So not only if rates drops, which they inevitably will, you may have a 2x built into an instrument like STRF, but you also have a tremendous tax advantage. So I had never taken it from that angle. We probably need a few YouTubers to go talk to the FIRE community about this, because this is a big deal. So anyways, moving on again. Another big deal I've noticed today, tokenized stock. So of course, in the US, we still have the Genius Act. We still have negotiations going on. We have traditional brokers. They're fighting to keep the untokenized stock. But in Europe, the new legislation in Europe has been very interesting. And if you look, Gemini just launched MSTR as a tokenized stock in Europe. And so a lot of people, of course, don't have access to MSTR without special privileges in their brokerages. Now you have in Europe MSTR as a token available on crypto rails. Well, this is absolutely amazing. I am not that lucky in my region. It's not available in the United States, so I'm not lucky at all here. But y'all in Europe can buy MicroStrategy on crypto rails, and there's new stocks added weekly. So this news is double valuable. It's too valuable, because it's valuable for MSTR, but it's also valuable for all of the hot stocks. And I remember this distinctly before the FTX collapse. I used to be very excited about the fact that FTX was listing a lot of the popular stocks on crypto rails, because you see, a lot of people don't want to open a Schwab account. Sure, they may be okay with Robinhood, depending on how they're connected to Reddit. They may be okay with Robinhood, but they definitely don't want to open a Schwab account. But you find out that if these stocks are tokenized, younger people are fine buying stock. They're fine buying stock. They just want to have it on a crypto wallet, easy to use, easy to carry, great UI. And that's I think, going to be the future. And the first stocks that are going to be tokenized are going to be popular American stocks. And these popular American stocks could go worldwide via crypto rails. And so MicroStrategy, there's no denying, when you look at the performance, there's no denying MicroStrategy within the past 5 years has become one of these very popular American stocks who may be tokenized, who may go on crypto rails. And so then I don't know what market cap we need to look at the total addressable market. Is it Tether and USDC? Do we need to look at how many stable coins and the growth of stable coins, and how much of that float, how much of that stable coin liquidity actually starts flowing to tokenized versions of stock, the first of which is MicroStrategy? This is another pool. If you go back to the pool of capital in the Bitcoin 21 model, and in my own models of it, I haven't considered that pool. But in that pool, there's probably a small square somewhere, let's say smaller than Bitcoin. There's a small square somewhere that says tokenized economy, Web3 economy, token everything economy, crypto economy, even though I don't like that word. And that's growing very fast too. And so Saylor may be able to drain funds from the crypto economy again. What if you have a tokenized MSTR stock on Solana, and people instead of wanting to own a wrapped Bitcoin on Solana, all of a sudden they want to own a tokenized MSTR on Solana. This is amazing news. I'm happy to see this coming back with, frankly, great actors in the crypto community. The Winklevoss twins have been in the crypto community since they got kicked out of Facebook. And, I kind of hope they become richer than Mark Zuckerberg. That's that over long term. That's kind of my hope. If you follow business, you will know what I mean by that. Let me conclude with the buzz of tomorrow, or the buzz of today is S&P qualification day, S&P eligibility day. So Bitcoin needs to stay roughly above 95,000, 96,000, something like that, in order for qualification or eligibility to happen. I think this is going to be good for the narrative. This could help the narrative. This could drive MNAV up. If it drives MNAV up, maybe we get some ATM, some common ATM to generate yield that way, the simplest way to form yield. But make no mistake, in my view, it will take multiple rounds of assessments by the committee. The S&P 500 as a committee. And that committee is committed to keeping the best stocks out. I'm thinking of Coinbase. I'm thinking especially of Tesla. They kept Tesla out for a long time. So MSTR's performance has been well ahead of Tesla in the past 5 years. What do you think is going to happen to MSTR? Right? When a committee has a history of keeping the best stocks out, what's going to happen to MSTR? I think it's going to take multiple rounds. That's why if indexes must be bought, in like retirement accounts where you don't have a choice, I'm a NASDAQ person all the way. And if you don't have the NASDAQ, a total stocks ETF, in my view, is much better than the S&P 500 because a total stocks ETF is just a rule. It doesn't discriminate based on an old-fashioned, old-world committee. I once used a worse word to describe these committees, and people didn't like it. So I'm just going to call it an old-fashioned committee that prevents you from achieving your returns because, it's what is this? We don't know what that is, Bitcoin. It's never going to work. Or like, what is crypto? Anyways, the S&P in recent years, in my view, my humble opinion, has had a history of being late adding the better performers, and that may continue. We didn't find that in the NASDAQ, of course, because the NASDAQ is just a rule-based system. So anyways, this was just my opinion. This was not investment advice, not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.